Hey, welcome back to our study called Favor and Hatred. We're looking at Genesis chapter 37, 12 through 17 right now for today. So if you have not read that part of the story yet, make sure you read it. And then we can jump in to the study here. So the first thing we want to see is that Joseph is an obedient son. That's why it's kind of hard. There's some images of, you might get into your mind too, that Joseph is kind of like a know-it-all, kind of a show-offy kind of guy. But then I don't know, he doesn't, if you actually read what the Bible says, that would be putting something into the story that's just not there. Because, here we have him being obedient to his father. So after hearing the dreams of their brother and seeing the favoritism of their father, Jacob's sons, all of Joseph's brothers, they take the flock and they go to pasture the animals near Shechem. Now, I find it interesting that they tell Jacob that they're going to take the flocks back to Shechem. This is the city that they destroyed. They are the ones that the Canaanites and the Perizzites wanted to exact revenge upon, but God struck fear in their hearts, remember? And so it's been, years later, but they want to go back. They want to take all the animals back to the city, at least whatever is left of it. Maybe it's being rebuilt, who knows? But they want to go back to the same place where they murdered everyone, to go have the sheep and the animals, maybe the donkeys and goats, be grazing out there. So I don't know if that's the wisest idea. I think that the idea that they're going there and that the Perizzites and Canaanites still know about that, and they're going back to that area and they're leaving the household, I think that causes some concern in Jacob. And you can tell because after some time passes, Jacob has a growing concern towards his sons and the flock that are out there. And so he calls Joseph to himself and tells them that he wants him to go to his brothers and see how they're doing. So there is concern there, because if he wasn't concerned, he wouldn't be sending Joseph. And so the next, there's a couple of things we need to notice here too. First, Joseph is not out keeping the flock with his older brothers, right? He has that coat. The coat of many colors was Jacob's way of separating Joseph from the dirty and common work of keeping the flock. He was a boy of 17. He should be out there with the flock. Normally he would have been, Normally when the sons get older, right, then that job of being shepherd is passed down to the younger generation. So he's 17, he would be out there. We see that with David. King David is out there. He's the youngest. All the older sons are all older than him, and so he's probably around maybe close to the same age as Joseph here. And he's the one out watching the flocks. Now, Jesse probably did not have as many flocks, as a huge of a flock as Jacob did. So that's probably why he could be out there by himself. He didn't have a lot of animals to watch. But Jacob has lots of animals, right? And so do his sons have animals themselves now. So there's a lot of animals. And so they all go, and Joseph's probably there. Maybe not Benjamin. Benjamin might have been home too, but we're not told. We're not told who's all there. We're told about the brothers, the sons, but it doesn't specifically tell us which ones are out there, but we're assuming that all of them are out there, except for Joseph. Maybe not Benjamin, because he's younger than Joseph. He would have been a younger boy, so maybe not out there with his other brothers, but all the other older brothers are definitely out there. So, second, Joseph answers his father's request to run an errand with, "Here I am." Even though he's the prize son, and no doubt Joseph enjoyed that position. I'm sure he wasn't like, "Oh man, I can't believe I'm favored by my father." What son would do that? But he answers his father's request obediently. He could have been like, "Well, I'm not the son of one of your servants." But he doesn't do that. Jacob sends Joseph from the Valley of Hebron, where they're at, to Shechem to see if everything is okay. Now we could debate the wisdom of Jacob in him sending his son on this errand with the knowledge of his son's resentment towards Joseph, knowing also that the Canaanites and Perizzites were upset about the destruction of Shechem. But you're sending your 17-year-old young man, your young son, to go find them. I don't know. Probably wasn't the best idea. You got servants, send one of them. But that's what he does. He sends Joseph. And this is what he decides to do. But Joseph acts obediently. He doesn't question. We don't have any of that in the text. We don't see him deferring. He goes, just like his dad tells him. So, it kind of gives us a hint as to who Joseph is, too. So Joseph arrives at Shechem. He goes out, he gets to Shechem, and he gets there, and he's wandering around the fields looking for the huge flock of animals. He doesn't find it. He's not finding his brothers anywhere. And as he's looking around, a man found him in the fields and asks him, "What are you seeking? What are you doing out here?" And Joseph tells him that he is seeking his brothers and asks him if he knows where they went. So the man says that they left, but he did overhear them talking about going to Dothan. And so Joseph leaves Shechem and makes his way to Dothan. Now Joseph's errand is done, right? He didn't have to go to Dothan. He could have gone to Shechem because that's where his father sent him, and he went home. Said, didn't find him there, but I heard that everything's going well with them, so they're good, Because he knows they're alive, because the guy saw them at Shechem, and he knows they're well, and they moved on to Dothan, so he could return home safely. Tell his father that they weren't there, but they moved on. And yet Joseph chooses to follow. He keeps going. He doesn't just stop there. He follows through with his mission here to find his brothers. So he goes on to Dothan. Now it's clear that we're meant to see the difference between Joseph and his brothers. There's that continuing contrast between him and his brothers. Joseph is obedient to his father and is willing to travel all the way to Dothan for his brothers. In the next part of the story, we find that the brothers wanting to kill Joseph, and they choose to deceive and lie to their father. So you got that contrast here between Joseph, who is willingly going, obediently going to go find his brothers by the request of their father, but his brothers are like lying and cheating their father. So you got the treating of the father, the two different ones here, and the contrast between them. Now in theology we talk about people or events called types. Probably have heard this before. The types are like, they foreshadow what is to come after. So they're a shadowy example of what is to come. There are many types of Christ in the Old Testament. Now Joseph has been identified as one of those types, and for many good reasons. Different events and actions that occur in Joseph's life point forward in time to Christ. They're to prepare the people for his coming. So you see that even with the apostles. The apostles would use the many types of Christ in Scripture, in the writings of the Old Testament, to say, here, this is why he's the Messiah. They proved him, this is why he's Messiah. So the book of Hebrews is full of this use of types. Now Matthew Henry explains the type that is found here in Joseph. He says that Joseph was here a type of Christ. Though he was beloved, son of his father, and hated by a wicked world, yet the Father sent him out of his bosom to visit us in great humility and love. He came from heaven to earth to seek and save us. Yet then malicious plots were laid against him. He came to his own, and his own not only received him not, but consulted against him. So we see this, we're going to see this as we go through Joseph's story. Many events, many things that kind of, they're a shadowy example of what happens to Christ, of how Christ acts. And so we see that, Joseph is an imperfect human, and so it's not a one-for-one kind of thing, but there is many things we can see, and many examples, many things that are going on there that, are just, you're like, wow, okay, I can see that. I can see Christ in that. And it's not something we just make up. The Bible tells us most of what most of the types are, too. Hebrews is a big one about typology. So read Hebrews to see a lot of that. Like the whole tabernacle idea is actually a picture of Christ. Well, so the tabernacle is a type, right? It's a shadowy thing of what would come. All right, so that's that. Now, one last observation before we're done. Joseph was in the fields wandering around looking for his brothers, and a man saw him out there, and this man just happened to to overhear the brothers talking about going to Dothan. Now, we as followers of God know there is no such thing as chance or accident. The events that allowed the man to meet the brothers and to hear their plans and then to encounter Joseph out in some random field were not an accident. It was the hand of God. He is planning to move Joseph to Egypt, and he chose to use some guy in a field to bring that into being. That's the providence of God. That's the hand of God working there. So yeah, it's just some guy out in the field, some nameless guy. We don't know what his name was. God knows. But he was just out to be out in the fields near Shechem, and sees his brothers, overhears them making plans to go to Dothan, and he just happens to be out there at the right time to see Joseph wandering around. And then he takes the time to talk with him, and he tells them the truth, and he tells them where they're at. And all those things could have been upended, and everything would have fallen apart. Jacob or Joseph would have gone to Shechem, not found him there, not finding traces of their destruction, but not finding him there. And who knows where they've gone. He probably would have gone back home and said, well, they weren't at Shechem, but I didn't find a slaughter, so they're probably still alive. That would have been the end of the story. Everything would have been different. But God used this man to bring what he wanted about. Very interesting. The providence of God in the Bible is an amazing study to do. So think about that one today as you're finishing up your day, and think like, okay, there's no chance meetings here. This was not by chance that a man was out in the field and overheard these things, and then was still out in the field when Joseph shows up. So it wasn't by chance. It was by God's plan. So that has direct implications for our lives and the way we live. So we need to remember that. There's a plan. People don't just pop in our lives for an accident. So come back next time, and we will conclude our study in Genesis 37, 1 through 17.